Over the weekend, President Trump was asked whether he needs to uphold the Constitution as he pushes forward with a massive deportation program.
The numbers don't lie. Trump's tariffs would have impacted hundreds of billions in trade, potentially raising prices on thousands of everyday products. But in a 6-3 decision that sent markets soaring within minutes, the Supreme Court just shut down what financial experts are calling one of the most sweeping executive overreaches in modern trade policy. What does this mean for your wallet, for US farmers who were terrified of retaliation, for the entire global supply chain that was about to get flipped upside down? We're breaking down the exact legal reasoning behind this bombshell decision, including how the 1974 Trade Act became Trump's kryptonite. The court didn't just reject his tariffs, they delivered a masterclass in constitutional checks and balances that has Washington scrambling. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
I was elected to get him the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States?
In his time as president, Trump has often treated the office like a personal playground. Finally, this time, someone took off his shovel. Weaknesses in his ability to unilaterally levy tariffs on goods and services have triggered his impatience. Those economic toys that poor Donnie Diapers had were taken away by the Supreme Court. The America First tariffs imposed by Trump were bound to pock you in the pocketbook. Everything from the expensive cars that your rich neighbor takes home to show off to the inexpensive headphones that you replace when yours break is subject to enormous taxes.
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said.
These weren't insignificant expenditures. Your Amazon shopping wasn't going to balloon in price just because you bought a few additional snacks. The part that's most funny, taxes like these were frequently justified by the government as being essential to ensure national security. Yes, because the biggest danger to American security comes from low-priced phones and t-shirts. The Trump campaign even went so far as to try and convince the public that shoes made in other countries are as deadly as nuclear weapons. Someone will eventually claim that Canadian maple syrup is being used to fund terrorists. The real consequences of these tariffs need an honest assessment. At stake are billions of dollars that would have come straight out of people's pockets. While campaigning, Trump repeatedly asserted his position as the defender of manufacturing workers. Something is off with the math. Supporting American industry should not involve making things more expensive for actual Americans who buy goods. Investors were going ballistic over this. Companies were frantically shifting their product sourcing and distribution strategies, much like ants at a picnic. Farmers were squabbling about whether to plant this year as they observed their fields. As opposed to just saying, oh well, and proceeding, countries react to tariffs by taking action. Furthermore, they usually go for soybeans and corn, which hurts farmers in areas where Trump has to win elections. Remember when Trump said trade wars are easy to win? Compared to milk left out in the open since July, that didn't age well. It turns out that getting slapped by judges who actually understand how the government works was the only thing that was uncomplicated. It was as if the Supreme Court had given him a civics lecture that should have been given in middle school. It wasn't the tariffs that were the real issue. It was about Trump acting like a corporate magnate, quick to make decisions that affect millions of people without consulting anybody. This is not how America works. We did not overthrow a monarch just to establish a monarchy with a red hat and fake tan. We staged a full-scale revolution against the king. As if it were a magical authorization slip that granted him unfettered power, Trump's legal team repeatedly mentioned the 1974 Trade Act. Essentially, they argued that this clause gave Trump the power to tax any foreign goods whenever he wanted. The attorneys' calm assurance while they maintained this stance was arguably the most remarkable thing about the whole case. Supreme Court justices essentially said, "Good try, orange turd, but that's not how our government works," after reviewing the case. In their opinion, the president cannot make major trade decisions without first consulting Congress, and the national emergency just isn't an acceptable justification. It's like a kid saying that an alien, a cat, and a dog all ate their homework in one day. After a while, nobody cares about it anymore. The beauty of this situation lies in the fact that the Constitution is serving its intended purpose. In the end, that boring civics class we had in high school on the separation of powers was really important. The system of checks and balances that the founders put in place to keep a tyrant like Trump in check has caught up with him. This ruling proves that no president, even Trump, has the authority to impose economic tyranny just because they were elected. The power to control commerce and levy tariffs rests with Congress. It would be irresponsible for the president to presume such power on the assumption that he possesses superior understanding. Just because you want something doesn't mean you get to have it. As a result, the Supreme Court basically told Trump what parents tell their infants. Preventing Grumpy Trumpy's tariff rage from having a major impact was thus achieved. It turns out that those dated core principles aren't completely dead yet. Who knew that a group of men in powdered wigs would sign a document sparing us a guy with every hair condition there is? Have you seen those scenes in movies where a character is about to be crushed by a falling piano when, out of nowhere, they are pulled away? This happened to the stock market after the Supreme Court stepped in and said that Trump's tariff celebration was over. The market just evaded a full-scale economic assassination attempt. Companies around the United States were scrambling to prepare for final exams before the decision was announced, as if they had not prepared. Companies were predicting how much they would have to raise prices to stay afloat, rushing shipments to avoid tariffs, and stockpiling goods like people preparing for the end of the world. Because they didn't know if they would survive the approaching catastrophe, small company owners couldn't sleep. In economic terms, Wall Street was bracing for a Category 5 hurricane. Investors were selling stocks at a rate that rivaled Trump's habit of leaving his spouses when they reach 50 years old. Large financial organizations, known for their calm demeanor, were sweating profusely despite wearing expensive suits. The market hates ambiguity, and Trump's tariff threats were just as vague as his commitment to honesty. As soon as the decision was decided, the market surged as if they had mainlined Red Bull and espresso at the same time. Everyone stands to gain from this, as investors realized they wouldn't be losing any money after all. As the impending trade Armageddon was postponed, the sound of popping champagne corks could be heard on Wall Street. Similarly, the solemn financial news presenters were fighting back smiles as they reported on the unexpected market rally. World leaders who normally engage in tedious diplomatic activities were meanwhile holding emergency consultations over Trump's tariffs. There was no idleness on China's part. The country was well on its way to formulating retaliatory tariffs that would have devastated the American agricultural sector. A severe lesson in the politics of international trade was in store for all the corn and soybean farmers from red states who had backed Trump. There was also no kindness from the European Union. Strangely enough, many of them were from states with substantial sway over presidential elections, and they were ready to tax a laundry list of American goods. Kentucky whiskey, with a particular emphasis. Wisconsin dairy, it's on the schedule. They appeared to have a good idea of where to apply pressure in order to have Trump experience the political pain. Small business owners whom Trump rarely mentions, unless they're wearing MAGA caps and standing behind him at rallies, were the ones who felt the greatest sense of relief. These companies aren't large enough to withstand price increases or outsource manufacturing to 15 countries. In your hometown, there were store owners who faced a tough decision: raise prices and lose customers, or stay put and risk bankruptcy. The court's decision virtually threw parties, even for big companies that normally stay out of politics. When companies that routinely shell out millions to lobbyists in order to remain silent are openly celebrating, it's clear the tariffs would have been a complete bust. Even though they often speak in formal corporate lingo, CEOs started using terms like crucial ruling and economic sanity prevails out of the blue. The damage that these tariffs would have wrought was real and not just some made-up nightmare. Expert economists have calculated that the average American family would have seen a yearly spike in prices of hundreds or thousands of dollars as a consequence of Trump's trade war. It is not idle speculation that the prices of food, clothing for your children, and parts for automobile repairs are on the rise. When Trump next stands at a rally claiming to be fighting for ordinary Americans, remind yourself that he would have snatched your money while assuming the role of trade war commander. Instead of protecting American jobs, he was putting them in jeopardy. His goal was to increase the cost of buying, not to restore America's greatness. You can't always have your way, the Supreme Court basically told Trump, echoing what most parents tell their young children. There was a celebration in the stock market, farmers narrowly avoided disaster, and our economy dodged a bullet. All because Orange Turd was reminded by 9 individuals wearing black robes that even presidents must abide by the rules. There isn't a happy ending to this economic horror film that I'm aware of. The Supreme Court taught Orange Turd a fundamental civics lesson in addition to saving your money from Trump's tariff catastrophe. They reminded him that despite their strange gold toilets and belief that they should be, presidents are not kings. Keep this case in mind the next time Trump claims at a rally that he alone can solve America's issues. Our entire government was created with the express purpose of thwarting leaders who are power hungry and believe that the rules belong to others. Not simply your bank account is the true hero in this tale. It's that dull old Constitution that doesn't wear silly hats or tweet, but it nevertheless managed to keep America's trade policy from turning into another failed Trump reality show.